Hello, my name is Jessica Arambula, and today I will be discussing the French Revolution. So first I wanted to point out what a revolution is. According to Theda Skapol in her text, States and Social Revolutions, there are two different definitions that make up a revolution, a social and political revolution. So a social revolution is a rapid and basic transformation of a society, state, and class structure, and they are accompanied and in part carried through by class-based revolts. A political revolution transforms state structure but not social structure, and are not accompanied through class conflict. So the French Revolution was in a sense both social and political revolutions due to the class conflict in the beginning and the political changes that were made towards the end. So just going back before the revolution, the French lived in vestiges of feudal regime. They had a large middle class, and peasants owned about 50% of the land. So the King of France ruled over this whole collection of land. Under the monarchy, the king was the country's symbolic center, and he was seen as this holy being. He had absolute power and ruled over these three different estates. So the first estate were the clergy and the church, who had this sense of divine right. They didn't have to pay any taxes. The second estate were the nobles, the local elites, and royal officials, who were pretty much born into these positions. The king very much relied on them to make his rule effective. And then you have the third estate, which was the middle lower classes and the peasants. They made up the largest portion of their population. So that was basically their social structure. So at this time, we begin to see a lot of conflict occur in France for many reasons. The French had joined with the American forces, which ended up doing a lot more damage than it did good. It increased taxes due to the Navy budget, which affected the peasants the most. France was at this time surrounded by tradition and practices of the church, but we start seeing these new ideas of enlightenment, which began separating people's beliefs and customs from the church. So this led to many changes in their views of the king. Once people started to detach themselves from religion, they also detached themselves from the ideas of the king's sacred nature. Also at this time, many sexual scandals started surfacing about the king, which pretty much tainted his reputation that much more. So around this time of enlightenment is when we start seeing people such as Voltaire, Montesquieu, and Rousseau, who started establishing very revolutionary ideas. So Rousseau was a very influential figure in the beginning stages of the revolution. He argued very much for democracy. Also, a lot of Western events, such as the American War of Independence, were very influential to France because they supported a lot of these Enlightenment ideas and influences. So France lacked many freedoms at this time, so these new ideas of enlightenment started to question the monarchy, which led to the beginning of the revolution. So first it begins as the struggle for a constitutional monarchy, but then it gradually starts forming into this democratic movement. So one event that basically started the revolution is the fall of Bastille on July 14th, 1789. An outbreak occurs in hopes to lower the price of grain by eliminating deputies who levied it. It almost turned into this massacre, and after this, a ton of riots started. This led to the Constitutional Revolution in hopes to spread out equality for positions and eliminating tax exemptions. Then you have the Declaration of Rights of Man, which began the formation of people's interest in politics. It created a lot of clubs and things like that. So at this time, we have one of the largest demonstrations for the revolution, which was the March of Versailles. Basically, people broke into the palace and threatened the royal family for their rights. So what's interesting about this is that this march was started by women. And actually a lot of the different riots and hostile demonstrations were started by women. So that's a fun fact there. So we have all of these riots and new thoughts and controversy about the king, which ended up leading to the fall of the monarchy and eventually led to the king's execution and the establishment of a republic. So this made necessary not only for a new constitution, but also new symbols. So they transformed symbols such as liberty into the republic. According to Lynn Hunt in The Imagery of Radicalism, revolutionaries purposely changed the meaning of these symbols over time to represent higher stages in the development of the revolution. So we have the fall of the king, the formation of a new constitution, and the national convention that was formed by the third estate. So they try to set up this emergency government designed to provide food, direct the war efforts, and punish any counter-revolutionaries. This is when the Reign of Terror begins. So the government implements a new form of punishment, which is the guillotine, which is this device that pretty much just chops off your head. And then you have leaders such as Robespierre, who was the leader of the government, try to create this Republic of Virtue, which basically forces citizens to become Republicans. So he was very conflicted in himself, I think, and very misunderstood. He did believe very much in liberty, but he also was all about protecting the government. So he states in the Cult of Supreme Being that the protection of the government is only due to peaceful citizens. And his way of keeping these citizens peaceful was threatening them with the guillotine. So people were pretty much afraid to speak up. Anything they said or did could have been turned against them, and made it seem like they were going against the government or the Constitution. So you have many revolutionaries at this time die at the guillotine because they spoke up about being silenced. Like you have those revolutionaries such as Danton, which we saw in the film, die because he was speaking up against the government. Also, Jacques-Louis Menatre describes the men of the National Assembly in his memoir, Journal of My Life, as being a den of slanders of vindictive men seeking to slaughter one party so as to replace it with another. So people didn't have a voice because they were afraid of the government, which is what they were trying to fight against with the monarchy. They wanted that freedom of press, they wanted the freedom of speech, and now they supposedly got it, but they didn't. So this only increased division in the society, in the French society, and all this controversy brought the fall of Robespierre and the fall of the Terror. The fall of the Terror did not fully end the revolution, but you still had many political events and clubs that formed, and legal and political rights that endured in France. But eventually the government leads a war effort abroad that ultimately brings the power of one man to France, who completely rips apart the Republic. So that is just a brief summary of the French Revolution. Again, my name is Jessica Arambula, and thank you for watching.